So, despite things going seemingly very quiet on the investigation, the David case is still going on, and there's still a lot of speculation and new theories that are floating around behind the scenes. Now, a lot of people have done breakdowns on the David situation at this point. Okay, there's very little new evidence coming to light. I just want to bring your attention to the fact that I actually just did an hour-and-a-half breakdown on my main channel, Trap Law Ross, where I kind of pulled together and condensed a lot of the kind of proven theories and evidence in the David case into one video. I tried to make it kind of punchy for you guys. You know, could have gone 3-4 hours, but I feel like this actually is just really focused on all of the facts of the case and just everything that we could find, everything that we could prove. And it's a really interesting video. So if you want to get more backstory, if you want to get kind of, you know, a much more complete look at this story in one go and kind of David's backstory and everything that led up to this incident, I would definitely recommend that you go and check that video out. But over here, there is still a whole bunch of speculation, and I think a lot of these narratives about David potentially not being responsible for the murder, overdose theory, family theory, all of these things are still going around, and there's a lot more questions that are being asked at this stage. One of the big things that a lot of people are asking and have been confused about is the fact that there were seemingly two Celestes. There was this Celeste girl that got found in the trunk of the car that was an underage girl that, you know, had seemingly been around David in the lead up to this very sad news coming out. But then there was an older woman called Celeste Herrera who was in her 20s that, you know, a lot of people felt maybe she was, you know, hired as an industry plant or a decoy to try and confuse people. She got the same first name. They got her wearing some of the same outfits as the original Celeste. And a lot of people have been wondering what this is all about. People are saying, why is the different Celeste so quiet? If the other Celeste really exists and is alive, why is she not posting anything? Not a single statement. I know, right? She might care about her privacy, but allegedly she appeared on his streams and at other events, so she wasn't fully anonymous. I wonder why she doesn't post anything like, I'm the one from the streams and the adult Celeste who was dating David, not the victim Celeste. When she'd do this, it would have been obviously good for the case to cut some part of the speculations, like Celeste Herrera was a fake identity of Celeste Rivas. I can't stop thinking about this, and I can't believe in the two Celeste version of this situation. Do you have any theories or explanations? And people have pointed out, rightfully so, that they probably have been told to avoid talking about the case. Okay, people saying, the poster says, I see the point, but it would be helpful for the public debate. They can't stop people talking about this and making theories by just being quiet. Okay, so I think this is interesting. I think the fact that, like, this is just so suspicious, and it really is a head scratcher for me too. I'm just finding myself just thinking, like, why is there another person and she looks similar and she's got the same name? It is very unusual, and we are trying to find out what's going on with that. Okay, people are saying, I found the video and holy crap, it does look like the Gap hoodie. They really dressed her up like Celeste Rivas to make it seem like Rivas wasn't the girl in the stream. Question is, how did they get her to do it without her knowing what they were trying to do? In my opinion, I'd be super weirded out if someone asked me to wear some young girl's old Gap hoodie and some big, ugly blue light glasses. A Gap hoodie's really trendy. It's really difficult to believe Herrera would agree to that stuff without at least knowing why. Weird, weird, weird. But maybe this answers your question about why she isn't saying anything, whether she was covering up David dating a minor or potentially covering up Rivas' real disappearance or death. She must have at least suspected she was pretending to be Rivas and that it was weird as F. Now, look, let me just give you my opinion on this situation, okay? It is like quite a tall order for me to try and accept that, like, they really created this industry plant and they got like a twin, they got like a clone, another Celeste to try and kind of throw people off the scent. But then again, we're dealing with a body in the trunk. We're dealing with a potential murder. We're dealing with a death, okay? People would go to great length. They would sacrifice everything they had to try and avoid getting caught up in something like this. So a part of me believes that this could be a real thing and that this really was a cover-up that they were trying to do. But there is also a big part of me that feels like this could be a coincidence. Now, look, okay, I've had it in school. They're damn near, 2-3 people with the same name. You're thinking, how the hell have you guys ended up all in the same class with the same name? But it happens, okay? It could be a coincidence that he does also have a friend named Celeste. I mean, it's a tall order, but it could be a coincidence. They produced a lot of those Gap hoodies. Now, I know it is very sus. They got her wearing the same hoodie, and it's just like, bruh, it's the hoodie from the missing poster. But I do personally feel like that could be a coincidence. It could just be another Gap hoodie. Hella people wearing Gap hoodies. So this one is, this theory has definitely been a head scratcher. I could see it going either way. I'm not trying to defend it, but it's like, I think it's just as far-fetched it's just as coincidental. It's just as likely in real life that really it was just a coincidence that he had a friend that looked similar with the same name, also wearing a very common Gap hoodie. Like, I could believe that just as much as I could believe that it's cover up, because that's just like a whole crazy thing that's very unlikely. But so is this being a coincidence. So this one's a head scratcher, and I really am excited to hear from this Celeste Herrera. I think at some point, no doubt she'll speak out. When the case is resolved, when it goes to court, when more information comes out, no doubt we'll eventually hear from her. But it is definitely a head scratcher. Now, a lot of people have noticed this. This is a new thing going around the David subreddits. People have noticed that this is another Instagram account, this extra David account. They're confirming that it's him. They're basically saying that, like, this is the account, like, this is actually him. We can connect this to him. And people are saying, tell me why when I Google lensed David's profile picture from his other Instagram account, this is what came up under exact matches. I don't know how this all works, but seeing as he stated before he's into gore P-word, I'm just coincidental. Okay, so people are thinking, right, they're saying that basically that image that's his display picture on this Finsta account, it comes up to this thing saying, I thought he was just hooting and hollering, right, from the Mayhem subreddit, and people are looking up those lyrics. Right, looking up post on Mayhem of other lyrics that they've got, all about corpses, all about guts, and necro lust and all this weird stuff. Your stinking corpse I desired, nothing can take me higher. Another super weird coincidence. All right, people are saying Mayhem has nothing to do with gore P-word. They're a black metal band. A lot of you guys need to expand your listening palette. If a black metal band with lyrics like this is shocking to you, Cannibal Corpse, which is death metal, would give you a heart attack. But this is also a popular meme. I've seen it all over TikTok. This has been a reach for me, okay? But again, people are just noticing these like weird little connections and these weird little things that just this David guy was just so into all of this dark demonic stuff. Okay, and another aspect that I think relates to that is the fact that a lot of people have been asking, what happened when David was 11 to get him removed from school? People are saying, does anyone know what happened to David when he was 11? Why was he removed from school? What did he do that meant he had to be kept away from other kids and socializing normally? Does anyone know anyone he went to school with? His mother is an educator and his father a litigation consultant. He clearly knows the technicalities of the law. Was he taught how to get away with criminal activity? Can anyone fill in the gaps in his history? Since we've rinsed Celeste, let's broaden the investigations. Now, people are saying, did he have a song where he said he was dealing with drugs in 2016 and he was in the back of a police car? That would make him an 11. Now, look, I don't personally believe that, okay? He says he did say that in one song something about what I did in 2016 when he was 11, okay? He says it looked like that when the family moved from Queens to Houston, he pulled out of school and they moved virtually across the country to distance themselves from something. It's fascinating. There have to have been people in Queens who knew the story. People are saying he wasn't doing well academically. Could be other reasons, but that's what I heard. Now, my opinion on this, I don't know. This is my opinion. Okay, this is my speculative opinion. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if something crazy went down when he was a kid. Like, you hear these stories of kids, killing animals, and then they grow up to become serial killers. I really don't know. But honestly, it just wouldn't surprise me if it came out that he had done something super messed up as a kid. I mean, look, there's all sorts of stories of kids injuring other kids, hurting other kids, getting into altercations. You can't really hold kids criminally responsible. There's been cases where, preteen kids have committed murder or committed crimes or committed serious violence, and they kind of, you got juvenile hall, but you can't really be taken out of society as a child. Society has an obligation to try and help children no matter what they do. If they do, absolute madness, violence when they're a kid, really they're going to get a couple of years in a detention center and they're going to be let back onto the streets. That's just how it works. So it's just speculation, but I personally do believe that we might eventually find out why he ended up, being taken out of school, why he ended up being homeschooled, why he moved out of the area so suddenly with his family. And I think that could be very interesting when it comes out. Now, another thing that's new that's been going around is essentially this clip from News Nation. And they've basically allegedly spoken to a lot of students at Celeste school. And apparently there's a student who did tell them that Celeste would tell her and a few people in the class about her being in the relationship with David, as well as showing photos of David to them. So no doubt, I don't blame the kids for not ringing the alarm bell sooner, but it does seem like the students in that school actually did know a lot of what was going on.
And as for Celeste's family, with whom she clearly had a strained relationship, they are also nowhere to be found. But her former classmates and other students And students' parents in Lake Elsinore speak of a girl who had few, if any, close friends, except for one. And we now know that she didn't keep that one friend much of a secret.
So we talked to a student that went to school with Celeste, and she did confirm that Celeste showed a few classmates photos of her and David. She said that she was in a relationship with the singer David, and she wasn't shy about telling the few people in this classroom that she had a relationship with David, and even showed photos of him. Now, this is the little bit of information that we've actually been able to get, and we have talked to over 100 students. We have asked them if they knew Celeste, if they've seen Celeste. A lot of the students have confirmed they went to middle school with Celeste, they knew of Celeste, they heard she went missing. A lot of people said, I remember her beautiful curls, but out of all of those people, nobody, besides the one thing I just said, nobody really knew Celeste. They just didn't know her personally. Even the parents, a couple of the parents would see her, but nobody knew her family, nobody knew her personally that we've talked to that were at the school.
So it does sound like, you know, some people, a few select people knew at the school, knew what was going on, and people are saying no matter how she died, this particular fact needs to not be swept under the rug. Scream it from the rooftops that he was dating a child. And this is interesting, right? Because I think as they put dating, okay, it's not even likely. It's absolutely, I want to say 100%, but maybe I can't even say 100%. I feel like it's 99% likely, in my opinion, that David is going to deny being involved with Celeste romantically. He has to. He has to. It's an impossibility that he would admit to dating this child. It's just not possible. It's just not within the realms of possibility. It's not within the realms. I mean, unless he ends up catching a charge and just goes full plead guilty and admits the whole thing, which again I think is extremely unlikely. There is no world in which this guy is going to admit to have been in a relationship with this kid. But as we're hearing from this news clip, it sounds like she was in her school, according to classmates, telling them that she was in an actual relationship with this grown man. And that is going to be damning. That testimony might end up coming up in court if this does end up going to trial, if this does end up resulting in a charge. We still don't know at this stage, but I think that that is a really interesting point. Because even though we've got all of these pictures of them seemingly together, it looks like her engagement ring, all of these things, we can't still really prove, they don't really prove that, you know, intimacy happened. Yeah, there's the screenshots of the messages, and I'm not trying to defend David here, but just because you I could screenshot. Listen, all right, okay, I ain't gonna say too much, right? But I could write a text to somebody and say, "Yo, like, I don't know who's the hot." Like, I could write a text message to somebody saying, "Yo, I smashed Taylor Swift. It was so good, man. It was just so." Man, it was just, man, I felt like I was swimming with dolphins in there. Shit was fire. That box was fire. And I could post that screenshot and be like, look, proof. Traplaw Ross smashed Taylor Swift. It don't really mean, it's not provable. It doesn't really do anything. So even that message, the alleged screenshotted text messages where she's apparently telling somebody about them having intimacy, that doesn't prove anything. Okay. And even this doesn't necessarily prove anything. So I think it's 100% likely that, I think it's in my opinion, it's 99.9% likely that no matter what happens, David, at some point in time, at some point along the line, if he never gets charged with this, he will have to come out and deny being in a relationship with his child. Whether he does it at trial, whether he has absolutely no repercussions from this body being found in his trunk and he wants to get back to his music career, he is going to have to address this at some point along the road. And I think that stuff like this is very interesting, and it really does paint a picture of him being involved with this child. But again, there's very little actual evidence that we have at this stage as the public. Maybe the police have something. Maybe the police got, like, you never know. They might actually have something. Could be videos on an old phone of them together doing stuff that's not acceptable. And that's going to bury him if that's true. But stuff like this is not really going to prove anything, but it does kind of add another dimension to the fact that, people are saying it was a relationship. You can say, look, he might He might come out and say, look, this was a runaway girl that was a fan. I was trying to help her with a difficult home life. Like, that's the perfect defense for him. And he can be like, look, we was friends and we was on some cutesy Hello Kitty friendship, but it was never a sexual relationship. Nothing ever happened. It was never a romantic relationship. And then if this is all the police have, they're going to have to come back with testimony from classmates saying that they said it was a real relationship. So I think this is really interesting, but again, it doesn't prove anything. Okay, it doesn't prove anything. Now, apparently, and this is slightly alarming, okay, apparently David is still active on Snapchat, okay? This is going around on the David2 subreddit. It says he's also recently been active on Snap. That's allegedly his Snap account, okay? He's apparently active on there. And, people are just pointing out that fact. They're thinking that it's interesting that he's on there. They're saying that the green dot, green activity dot must mean that they've been active recently, like in the last 24 hours. So people are thinking, yo, he's on Snapchat, bro's doing his streaks. All right, he's enjoying his freedom while he can. People are saying he knows his time is coming, man, but we're going to have to wait and see, okay? People saying they keep asking why he hasn't been charged because they don't know how she died. She could have fallen down the stairs and broke her neck, or maybe David shot her. They don't know, therefore they don't know if the death was a result of criminal behavior. Therefore, they cannot charge him, okay? And that's going to work in his favor. But as we've seen, David's still active. He's on Fortnite. He's on Snapchat. He's doing all sorts of he's doing side quests right now. And it is crazy. But at the end of the day, it does sound like the police ain't got nothing at this stage strong enough to arrest him. Clearly, that's factual. Otherwise, he would have been arrested. Now, another thing that I've seen that I did actually think was very interesting was this post a couple of days ago. Okay, so people were pointing this out. It says on February the 13th, David posted on Instagram a series of photos of him making blood-stained shirts. Look at the black tarp used underneath of them. Not sure if it's the same material, but it definitely qualifies as a unique material, and police apparently said a unique material was used to wrap up the body. Now, this is super interesting. Now, again, we can't prove it. It's not absolutely definitive, but this black tarpaulin, which ironically, it looks like he has purchased this black tarpaulin specifically to lay out on his beautiful floor at his $20,000 a month Hollywood mansion to put fake bloodstains on these shirts so that he can wear them on stage. I don't know if he's selling these as merch. But it's interesting, right? Because it's like, yeah, you're using that tarpaulin to make sure you don't get fake blood on your nice things, but that is the same thing that you would do as if you were actually dealing with real blood, if you were actually trying not to leave evidence behind or anything like that. Now, I'm not saying definitely that it is the same tarpaulin used on the body, but people are pointing out that it looks similar to the tarpaulin used. Now, for the record, you can't see any, you can't see the body in this photo. It's unclear whether the body is even still there or whether it was removed from this tarpaulin before the picture was taken. But this black material, it does look similar. Now, you're not seeing those rings around the edges of them as you're seeing in these earlier pictures. You can see these rings around the edges. So who knows if it's the same one? It's definitely the same color. It looks like it could be a similar texture. But I do think that, if it turned out that this was the same material used, that would definitely paint quite a damning picture. But again, I think what's really tough about this case is there's all these little interesting clues, but it's like, and this isn't a defense, but it's like everything just seems to just fall a little bit short of being able to connect these things to David. You got a girl that looks a bit like her. You got a photo of David with a girl, but she's got her face covered by a handbag. You got the handbag in the house. There's so much stuff that looks so damning. If only it was just a little bit more substantial. If only there was just a little bit more connection. If only there was just a little bit more proof to tie to it. But no doubt, I wonder if the detectives are facing the same thing. They're saying, bro, we got so much information. It's just not quite enough. We just can't quite connect. Like, it's just not possible. So I feel like that is actually super interesting. There's more and more of this stuff that's going around. And a lot of people have been kind of exploring this theory of an overdose. I think there are some people that, I don't think people want to see David, skate if he did have something to do with this. But I actually feel like so many people are just trying to make an understanding of like, okay, if the police really haven't got in there and made an arrest, there's got to be something more to this. There's got to be like, maybe there is actually a good reason why they've not made an arrest. Maybe there actually is an alternative explanation. And if we did get that from the police or from David or from any of that, I think that would really change the narrative. It would change how people are talking about this case. But right now we got nothing. So everybody is digging deep into these speculations. And the OD story is definitely one of the ones that people are kind of putting putting a lot of their kind of energy into. This is the speculation of OD. What I don't understand is, say Celeste did OD while doing drugs with either David or others, wouldn't it be really stupid for whoever was there to witness it, to take the body and just hide it? Wouldn't common sense, unless you're a psychopath, tell you to call the cops instead of digging a much bigger hole? When I hear there's a dead body in a frunk, I lean more towards someone who disregards human life. Somebody who got caught up in much worse behavior, intentionally killed her and hid it to avoid going to jail for years, or just didn't care if people found it. If it's much more of an innocent situation in comparison to murder, like ODing instead, that would lead me to assume it wasn't anyone's intention for her to die, which would mean they would actually take her losing her life seriously, with empathy. Why would they go dispose of her? We would then have to assume David isn't insane enough to kill her, but is also dumb and insane enough to go to hide his ex's body, instead of being a normal human and going to the cops. But people are saying because it would be career-ending if it came out that an underage runaway that he was romantically involved with overdosed at a party in his house. Yet here we are. This person says this right here. The disgusting irony, it still bit him in the ass in the end. I hope this little girl gets her justice, even if it has to be after she died. I just hope, no matter what happens, that people will continue to shun this disgusting... Okay. Now, I'm not going to lie. The overdose theory is one of the most compelling theories. I do actually think that there's a part of me that actually does believe. I don't believe this story, but I do. But if you told me that, look, the toxicology report came back and there was a fatal amount of drugs in this person's system. Honestly, and it kind of pains me to say it because of just all the other stuff that looks so bad. If the toxicology report came back that it was an overdose and there was a fatal amount of substances in that body, honestly, I could believe that somebody would panic and freak out and put a body in a trunk. I could believe that this was somebody else. I could believe that, David was out on tour and someone had a party in his house and his underage girl that chills in the house is there and they're all having a madness with older people doing drugs and she dies and they just say, fuck. They panic. They just get scared and they put the body in the trunk. I feel like it is unlikely, but it could be true. And I think the toxicology report will actually open the door for that narrative to essentially end up being the one that ends up being used by the authorities. Now, I personally do have another theory on this. I'm not going to lie. This is just me playing devil's advocate. In my opinion, I feel like the most likely scenario is that he did kill her. In my opinion, I think the most likely scenario is that there was some kind of altercation, some kind of argument, or even just to the point where it was a breakup and he wanted to get rid of this person who essentially their relationship would have been illegal. It would have exposed him. It would have ruined his life. I could see the most likely scenario is the murder scenario, in my opinion. But I've toyed around with another scenario in my head, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm out of line spreading this. I'm not even sure that I want to say it, but I could almost... this is a very hard to believe scenario, but I do think that there is a scenario to be made that... I don't want to say framed, but like people do crazy things. People do wild things. And, if you told me that Celeste put herself in that trunk, not necessarily as I'm going to end my situation and frame you and make it look like you killed me. I mean... Look, it's very, very far-fetched, but I feel like there's so many other potential theories that could end up being true. Life is sometimes stranger than fiction, and I feel like, who knows? There could be a scenario where maybe she got in the frunk herself to play a joke on him. Maybe she got stuck in there. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe she, was getting in there to surprise him and, ran out of oxygen in there and couldn't get out, couldn't contact him, didn't take a photo. Who knows? It sounds really dumb, but honestly, like, there could be a scenario where it ends up being just a really tragic accident. That doesn't undo any of the possibility that this is this sordid relationship with a minor. But again, that's not... I don't know whether you can say that's been proven, but I just feel like, if this arrest doesn't end up taking place, I do wonder whether the story that comes out as to how this actually happened might end up being just something absolutely wild, unthinkable, unrealistic, but true. Unrealistic, strange things happen all the time. And that's not me trying to give David bail. That's really just me saying, like, there was a case in the UK where, this kind of was foul play, but, there was a situation where a guy and a girl were having a dispute, and somehow this woman managed to actually get this guy to get inside of a suitcase. And then she left him in there and wouldn't let him out. And it was like they was playing some weird, twisted game. And then, she filmed him in the suitcase saying, please let me out. And then left him in there overnight. She said, I fell asleep. And he died. So this is the case I'm talking about, the murder of Jorge Torres. a 42-year-old American man who was suffocated to death on February the 24th, 2020 after being zipped into a suitcase. His girlfriend was arrested for second-degree murder, and she was ultimately convicted and given life in prison. Okay? So, she called 911 and said that the boyfriend was dead. She claimed they had a bottle of wine and played hide and seek. She claimed that they thought it would be funny to put him in the suitcase, and they were both laughing. She said she went upstairs and fell asleep, and he died. But, they found the phone, and they searched the phone, and they found 2 videos that she had taken showing her laughing as he was pleading for help inside the suitcase. She said, "That's what you do when you choke me. That's what I feel like when you cheat on me." And, she ended up going down. She ended up going down and being sentenced to life in prison. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but I'm just saying that a lot of very strange things, very unusual things do happen in real life. Sometimes people die and the circumstances are extremely strange. Okay, but for the record, okay, a lot of people aren't buying the overdose theory, and I'm still struggling to really get my head around it. It says I'm not really buying that she OD'd. I read that her body was in advanced decomposition, and despite that, the lack of oxygen due to being in the car, in the bag she was in, and no bugs being able to get to her corpse made it hard to know how long she'd been in there or dead. Why is David's car all dented up in the back? Could he have possibly been jealous and accused her of cheating, and in a rage strangled her to death without breaking the hyoid bone? Could he have stabbed her to death and the decomposition was so advanced there's no evidence of it? Was she alive and in the bags and he trapped her in the frunk and kicked it and dented it to terrorize her? Or was it too small for her to fit and he could only get her in by dismembering the body, and he lashed out in a rage and damaged the back of the car? The neighbor that reportedly spoke to him and seen Celeste with him at some point asked David if he was going to fix the car, but there's no timeline of the conversations and sightings. Was Celeste still alive when the car was seen damaged? Says there's nothing natural about a 14-year-old dying and ending up in the front trunk of a Tesla. A crime occurred is the type that we are waiting on to see. This insinuation that smooth-brained people are trying to make that this can somehow be explained away is getting mind-boggling. Not seeing that the OP is saying this, but the PDF committed a crime, period. Okay, overdose or not, the body was still concealed and not reported or anything, and David is still a nonce. I don't get if people thinking that her being murdered directly versus OD will somehow make a huge difference in David's morals, like it's suddenly okay that he was dating her. So again, look, I just want to make this very clear. It does seem like he was in a relationship with this girl, but again, it's like, how much are they going to be able to prove and she's not here anymore? It's going to be really tough. And honestly, I could see a scenario where he ends up walking because they can't prove they can't prove the death, and they can't really prove that any, physical abuse, any physical relations actually took place. And there's some more wild theories that are going around that really, like, I struggle to believe. But again, I do feel like there's a part of me that just wants to kind of like hold tight and just wait and find out. It says that there's a theory that the parents killed her and is framing David. David was in a relationship with her, no doubt. But what if he wasn't paying the parents one large payment or monthly, which is why they didn't care about her missing? And what if the car she was deceased in was actually gifted to the parents by David and they parked it right across his house to frame him? They are money hungry. I mean, go look at her GoFundMe. They hit the goal and changed the name to help the Rivieras to continue cashing in money. People are saying outright, her parents did not kill her. You need to stop with this. And look, I agree with that. Okay. It pains me to even say it, okay? I believe that. I don't believe anyone's trying to frame David, but, like, look, we've got to accept the fact that, like, there is always a possibility that somebody else still did this. There's a small, slim, unlikely based on all the evidence that we've seen, but there is a possibility that somebody else did do this. We don't know, right? We really don't know at this stage. And look, everything looks so damning for David, but I do feel like framing is such a reach. Like, I feel like the likelihood of him being framed is very small. The likelihood of him allegedly doing it is pretty big. But we've got to find out, man. And I really hope that if there is another reason for this, the police can actually prove that and tell the public and let everybody know. Now, another thing that's going around that's new is basically this kid who was allegedly a teammate on David's Fortnite team. He makes serious allegations against David and basically claims that he knew Celeste since she was 11 or 12. So let's check this out.
I think most of you all know I've known David for about 3.5 years. And the internet knows a 15-year-old girl was found disconfigured in the front of his car. Can't even say 15 because she was 14 when she passed. For those who don't know, David used to be a professional Fortnite player in the team that I was leading, Limit. Back then, I used to make music on my computer. He didn't have a good computer, so I told him about BandLab, and he started making music, and it completely popped off. And David, even before and after fame, he's always been a really, really nice person, like a little bit too nice, like comically nice. And for those who've been following me for a while, you know I used to have this ongoing joke over and over and over again about me dissing on David and us having like fake beef. Literally a year ago today, I posted, "The enemy, no, the enemy is David." And I would always make comments just hating on him because I thought it was funny to portray, you know, I'm jealous of him. It should have been me. And flash forward to today, this is absolutely disgusting. He has known this girl since she was either 11 or 12. That's disgusting. And he kidnapped her for a year and a half, and then she's found dead. And made a mockery of it by mentioning her name in songs, saying, "Oh Celeste, oh Celeste." He uploaded the romantic homicide music video on her 12th birthday. In the music video, he kills a girl that looks just like her. And in his other music videos, using another girl that looks just like her. A 12-year-old. And he was paying off middle schoolers to not say anything. I had some crazy foreshadowing that I even didn't see. This is utterly repulsive.
So, look, just more and more people from David's past are going to be coming out. My bad for not playing that on screen, but you kind of heard what he was saying. He didn't really show anything that was super interesting or different. But people are saying he's just repeating the info that was found online and just kind of like repeating what was already out there. This is him if you want to just see what he looks like, but he was just sat there talking for most of it. But, you know, people are basically saying, look, it's semantics at this point, but people keep saying this, it's not really that important. But more and more people are coming out. I honestly feel like it's going to get to the point where damn near anyone that's ever crossed paths with this guy is going to come out. I mean, I've had the amount of people I've had DMing me talking about, oh, I met David one time, and that's no disrespect. I mean, I appreciate it. Like, if you got any experiences with David, feel free to send them to me on Instagram at @TrapLowRoss. But okay, it's like anyone that's had any interaction with this guy is now colored by this situation. People are telling me, you know, I met David and he was super weird. The way he was moving was weird. But it's like, now that we know this about him, you weren't saying that at the time. You weren't ringing the alarm bells at the time. It's only natural now that you're kind of, you're being influenced by everything that's going on. But I do think it's interesting. Now, another thing that's circulated that I think is interesting is that, you know, everybody's been trying to associate Celeste with this account, YayWoohoo7. Okay. And there's basically a recorded Discord call that's going around, and people are saying it's definitely her voice. So let's hear that.
Thank you. Oh, do Duolingo. Spanish is so beautiful.
So that's the account. Bear in mind, the person talking is recording their conversation on Discord with Celeste, and it's quite hard to hear in the background because we're hearing it through the speaker, but it sounds like her. It sounds like her. The way she's talking, the accent, the sort of way that she uses her words, it sounds quite similar to when she was, you know, it's a different tone, but it sounds like the same cadence as when she was arguing with those people outside from the TMZ video.
I like this language. Oh my god. Follow me on TikTok. Bye. Naju. Yes.
So, you know, if you listen carefully, you might need to turn the volume up on that. But people are basically saying that it sounds like her, you know, and they're glad that people are spreading this around. Now, look, TMZ have been doing updates on anything that they can find. This is a little bit of a non-update, but I'll still share this with you, okay? TMZ's latest post about this today, they're saying that it's a cleanup crew at David's Hollywood Hills rental. They're doing a full sweep, okay? And really, look, this is a bit of a nothing burger, I'm not going to lie. He has moved out of the property. You know, that's pretty normal for, you know, property to change hands, and the landlord is sending the cleanup crew. But a lot of people are basically saying they really hope to God that the police really combed the place properly. And you know, there are some doubts because, you know, the police did a huge search, and then, you know, some random Redditor went to the house and found a key card to the Tesla outside, which damn near, like, what the hell? Like, you guys missed that? Like, what else did you miss? But essentially, the house has been cleared. Somebody else will be moving in there. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't move into that house. That definitely sounded haunted. But it says the landlord of the Hollywood Hills home where David was staying and where cops recently executed a search warrant is distancing himself from the singer amid the fallout over Celeste's death. TMZ has obtained pics showing a trash crew hauling a bunch of stuff out of the house where David was staying. The owner tells us that someone came by the property last week to take the rest of his stuff. Some items were left behind, and he is now throwing that stuff out to get the house ready for the next renter. You can see the crew tossing out a ton of bags of clothes and boxes, basically scrubbing the place clean of anything tied to David. I'm not going to lie, I would have copped all of that. I would have purchased all of the clothes left at David's house and, you know, investigated those clothes with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm a weirdo. Anyway, setting aside the media drama, The landlord is clearly eager to get a tenant in there, especially with that $20,000 a month rent. Okay, so look, the home is clear. It could end up going back on the market. I ain't gonna lie. I might have to go and do a viewing when they're opening that back up to the public for viewings. If there's an open house, might have to go and check that one out, man. But a lot of people were basically just saying that they really hope that the LAPD got what they needed from there before he moved out. Hopefully they did a better job of combing the house than the street outside. People saying, you know, it's wow, what an update, because normally landlords leave stuff from the last tenant for the next one. Now, I do think it's interesting because it's like sometimes you move into a crib and it's like people leave stuff behind that is actually useful, maybe some cutlery, some pots and pans, but not clothes, all right? Not clothes. But anyway, people are pointing out that there's been some contradictions in the reporting around the house. This was quite interesting. It says, Harvey from TMZ and a private investigator working with News Nation are offering differing descriptions as far as what the neighbors said about David's house. So he said, Harvey from TMZ is claiming that neighbors he questioned about the house have said that it was a real party house. But private investigator Steve Fisher says everyone he talked to on the contrary, that they were actually very courteous and quiet and that it was not a party house that it was rumored to be. People saying, I kind of feel like he was actually talking about Harvey when he said this, but I don't know this for a fact. I find it odd. Truthfully, I don't know if odd is the right word, but I find it odd that their stories are differing a bit. News Nation was seemingly to begin with getting a lot of their info from TMZ. Now they have their own private investigator. The information between the two isn't the same. I'm aware that this happens given there's so many articles on the site, but these two seem to be quite popular. He also says he heard a body had been in there for over a month and TMZ just says weeks, which could be a difference of a few days, but I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. All right. So people are saying it's so disturbing that TMZ has had the most coverage of the case. I understand they write about famous people, but it seems like it's already gone way too far. I actually disagree with that. This is a major story in the public interest. Since the car was there for over a month and it was ticketed during the complaint, it would have been the 27th, sometimes mid to late July. He came back for a few days for shows in early August. Maybe he was hoping to finish when he got back on September. Whatever. So the last thing I'm going to share you with, there's a brand new subreddit for the David sleuths, and this one is called Davidiots. Okay, this is a new subreddit that's been created to share all things weird, stupid, scary, and fascinating, all tedious about David and his fall. Now, I do think that this is necessary because I believe that the David Unfiltered or the David 2 subreddit? I think the David Unfiltered subreddit has now gone unmoderated, and there hasn't been any new posts for 6 days there now, okay? Because we discussed the original David subreddit actually being moderated by David himself. He then pulled back from moderation and basically made it so that you couldn't post there anymore, and it appears the same things happened here. All the mods have withdrawn, and you now have to request a post, but there's nobody to accept those requests, and the sub has died. So now we've got Davidiots, we've got the Celeste subreddit, and we've got David 2, and I will be keeping up with all of those subs to keep you informed of any updates. But look, it's difficult. Okay, it's difficult. We're actually all just dying for an update on this situation, and the well is running dry. So I think some of these theories are really interesting. I do wonder if an alternative narrative is going to come out at some point, hopefully from the authorities. If David wasn't responsible for this, we need to understand why. Okay, it's on the police, it's on the investigators to determine how this little girl ended up in this trunk, you know, no longer breathing, and it's super mysterious, it's super messed up, and we all just want to get to the bottom of this. Even if it turns out that David didn't actually do this, we want to have answers. It is important. It's in the public interest. I don't think anyone should say you can't talk about this, you can't report on this, because at the end of the day, we can't live in a society where little girls just disappear, turn up in the front trunk of Teslas, and we don't get any explanation. Whether or not it was a murder, whether or not it was a tragic accident, the public deserves to know, the family deserve justice, and in the public interest of public safety, we can't have stuff like this happening and going unanswered for. So that's why it's important to keep Celeste's name alive, keep this story alive, keep talking about it, and when new information comes out, we should all discuss it and just share that with the public for the safety of the public, because this is an important story. That's my opinion on it, but you might have a differing opinion. Is what it is. So let me know what you guys thought of this update below. Go and watch the deep dive that I did on my main channel. We kind of put together all of the facts that we found on the case. It's very definitive, and I think it's a really good way for you to kind of take take stock of all of the information that's out here and focus on the facts. We've omitted a lot of the stuff that, you know, turned out to be untrue or was nonsense, or we couldn't really tie it into the situation. So I think that is just like a really good one-stop shop for kind of all your information on this case up to this point, and really the chronological timeline of how his career played out in tandem with a lot of this wild stuff going on. It's a really good video. My whole team worked really hard putting that together for you guys, while I've been working hard putting together these daily updates. We've been kind of going back and forth. I've been sharing with them updates that I've done on this channel, and then they've dug deeper into them to try and prove them or disprove them, or to get more context around them. And my team did find a few things that I didn't actually find or I didn't cover on this channel, so there are exclusive pieces of information in that video. So go and check that out if you want to get more information on this case. I will keep you guys updated if there are any new bits of information that come out. We're all waiting for the police, and I will keep doing my job and keep you guys informed about what's going on in the public discourse. Thank you. Catch you in the next one.